Hi guys, and welcome to the horror room. So for this week's video, I thought we would talk about the different labels and companies that are releasing some of the more hard to find or obscure movie titles. And it's kind of rotated. Back in the 2000s, it was like a couple different companies that you could rely on. And now we're evolving into a new age, and there's new labels that people are uh, more talking about and seeking after what they're releasing. So let's talk about the older companies first, then we'll get into the newer stuff. Now, I'm gonna just say right now, I I don't have like a specific favorite when it comes to these because all of them have their certain releases that you can go to, and they have some of them have crossovers like different movies that are like Zombie, Full Cheese Zombie. There's different companies that have released it over the years. Depending on your preference for special features or the quality of the release, you could say one's better than the other, but we're not here to look at that. We're just here to look at the companies as a whole and what their kind of releases were like. So let's dive right in. First off, let's talk about Synapse Films. Now, right here, we have the release of Thriller, A Cruel Picture. Now, you're probably like, that's more of an action movie. It's not really a horror movie. I mean, it does contain some horrible things in it. But Synapse was known for releasing, some of the uncut stuff back in the day. This film contains scenes of explicit, stuff. I'm not going to risk that. YouTube's kind of touchy with some of this stuff. Um, but yeah, so this is an unrated version of this movie. Um, and yeah, their releases are pretty top notch. I do believe they released I Drink Your Blood, I Eat Your Skin. I think that's one of the ones they released. So they were kind of more for the Grindhouse era. And they did release some obscure 80s movies. I know I got Brain Damage through Synapse Films. And that's one that I hadn't seen for years. And after I saw it, I was like, okay, how did I miss this for so long? But this is probably, I would say, one of the lesser known labels when it comes to the releases. And unfortunately, they're not operating anymore, or maybe they've kind of been bought out. But still, Synapse Films, good stuff. Next, we have a bit of an underground label. Pardon my pun, because I mean, that's pretty much all they release is underground films. And that's Unearthed Films. Yes, we have the controversial Serbian film. Of course, it would take a underground label to release a movie as infamous as this. But yeah, Unearthed Films is one of those labels where as soon as you hear it, you know exactly what you're in for. They're releasing the rough stuff, the stuff that, most horror collectors kind of avoid. But some people, they'll delve into that crazier, darker, more disturbing side. And if that's what you're into, then Unearthed Films has you covered. Uh, I think one of the latest releases I bought was like an anthology. And I was really interested in it because of a lot of the directors attached and how long it took them to make it. Um, let's see if I can grab it real quick. Uh, where is it? Well, anyways, but yeah, it's on the Unearthed Films site. Which let me see if it's on the back here. Oh, unearthedfilms.com. So yeah, if you're looking for the more extreme, controversial, graphic, depressing type of horror movies, quote unquote, because a lot of people don't consider these horror movies, but they are very horrific. So I'd say it counts, and they're doing their job. Then this is definitely the company you want to seek out, but do it at your own risk. Start with something a little base level, like do your research on what the plot's about. Next, we have one of my absolute favorite labels. I know I said I was going to pick favorites, but I have so many releases of theirs, and they're always some of the best movies out there. Some of the top tier horror movies that everybody agrees is like some of the best stuff. And that's Blue Underground. They've done a lot of Italian horror movie releases, of course. Lots of Fulci, lots of Diodato. And Blue Underground, unfortunately, is not, making stuff nowadays, but in the early 2000s, this was the gold standard, was Blue Underground. Now, there's another company, which we're about to talk about, that was also right up there. So I would say this was like the Xbox and PlayStation of movie releases. They were neck and neck. Horror fans were constantly like, "Nah, you got to get the Blue Underground release. It's way better than the next release," which is, of course, Anchor Bay. Anchor Bay is another huge, huge staple, especially in the VHS market, because they were still releasing VHS for movies like right around when VHS was getting phased out, and they were like, nah, we got to get these special editions out here, like have multiple ways to watch them. And I think they might have released a few laser discs. I'm not entirely sure, but I know they did VHS and DVD. And Anchor Bay, I think, is defunct now. This is the last one that I bought under Anchor Bay, or if they're not defunct, they're not as good as they used to be. But this is a really good release of Halloween. It's like kind of like a leather book, and it's got little behind the scenes photos and stories, which, if you've watched Halloween or watched the documentaries, you've heard them all before. But it's still nice to have a little like keepsake, and then you can pull it out and read it and watch the movie. And this is a really damn good release of the movie. I think this is probably my favorite version of it, besides the Laserdisc, which I don't have. And I do want to get that, the Criterion. And Criterion is a company that, releases some horror stuff on occasion, but they're not on this list today because that's not their specialty. It's more like artsy, stuff like that. So that's kind of the old age of horror collecting right there. So now we're going to get into the newer age. Now we're going to start with the bottom, not in terms of quality, but as in terms of they've definitely slowed down. And that, of course, is Scream Factory. Now, what people love about these is you get these unique slip covers with specially made art. And they also, I think, were the first company to start doing reversible covers. So you could have the artwork from the slipcase, or you could switch it around and have the original like VHS art. Motel Hell is a good example of that. And I've always said, what's the point of having a slipcover if it looks the exact same as the DVD or the Blu-ray? So I like that this company gave you the option to change it up, and that definitely makes collecting Scream Factory Blu-rays something the police are after, apparently. But yeah, if you've watched Christian Hannah Horror here on YouTube, the dude has like pretty much all of them, and they look great. Now, if you want to put all your companies together in a row, you can do that. And those are some that actually look really good together. I do have the DVDs of Halloween 2 and 3 that they released, and they're really great, the artwork. Next, we have one of the more expensive boutique labels. For that reason, I don't have a lot of their films, but man, the quality is great, and if I could afford to get some more, I would. I do have the Hellraiser box set, and then I have The Hills Have Eyes, which, again, they come with like a behind-the-scenes booklet, very good quality. Got some behind-the-scenes stuff in here. Usually, these releases come with a poster that's double-sided, so you get the original artwork, and you get the artwork that was created for the box set, which, again, that's a really nice detail to have. I think they do it on the disc. Yep, they do the reversible on the disc. Sometimes they'll have little lobby cards, which I think those are cool to collect. So yeah, the fact that they have posters and lobby cards and reversible artwork. Arrow is definitely a fan favorite. Now again, they don't specialize in horror, but they do have some decent horror releases, and this is definitely one of them. So if you can afford to check out Arrow, I would recommend them. Sometimes they do sales. It's not very often, but when they do, it's a good time to grab good box sets like this. Next, we have another company that's a little on the more expensive side, and that's Vinegar Syndrome. Here we have a dual release of Hard Rock Zombies and Slaughterhouse Rock. I like how it's got, both of the covers, and then you get the case, and it's kind of like one of the old dual discs, but kind of they let Hard Rock Zombies dominate the cover. Um, but if you'd rather have Slaughterhouse Rock dominate, it has a reversible cover, which, eh. Um, Now, I do have some other Vinegar Syndrome releases I could have shown, but I thought this was the most unique one. Now, again, they're a more expensive label. They tend to go after the titles that most people have never heard of, including myself. I've seen them release movies that I'm like, what? And then I look into it and I'm like, oh, that's a very strange looking film. And like, unless you know what the movie is, and it's usually older movies, or very, very obscure movies. Like these are some very obscure 80s movies. So yeah, it's a little more of a gamble. And like I said, they are pretty pricey. They do sales sometimes, not as often though. And I've heard some people complain about the quality. You could probably chalk it up to collectors being picky. I don't know. But next, we have a great label. I think this one's one of my favorite newer ones, honestly, besides the last one, which I saved. And that's Severin Films. They do a lot of really good, like, cult hits, stuff that, deserved kind of a second look or a second chance. And House on the Edge of the Park is definitely one of those films. It's got, is it David? Yeah, David Hess from Last House on the Left in it. And of course, he plays a bad guy. But what makes these releases interesting is they're packed with special features, interviews, and they also usually come with the soundtrack. And that's something that some of these releases do as well. I think Blue Underground did some of that. Pieces, that was a different one. But yeah, some of these releases do get the soundtrack. Some of them, it's like it doesn't make sense that they put the soundtrack out because it's like there's not that many iconic songs on there. Like I have a version of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes that comes with the soundtrack, and you're like, hey, cool. But then you listen to it, and it's like sounds like it was ripped right from the movie, not like the original audio mixings, which is kind of bizarre and kind of pointless. But Severin's releases are definitely not pointless. They have a lot of great titles under their belt, and I think at the convention I went to, they were doing like 3 or 4 for a specific price. So if you can hit their booth up at a convention, usually you can get some damn good deals and snag some great movies out of it. Lastly, but not leastly, if that's a word, we have Visual Vengeance, kind of collaborating with Wild Eye Productions. Now, Visual Vengeance, we talked about them. They're more known for the obscure shot-on-video releases. Here we have Abomination. And, of course, they do the reversible art. They come with posters. They come with the little rental stickers that you can stick on everything. They're just fantastic. They're really fun. Now, they don't have some of the big ones, like Video Violence or Wood Chipper Massacre under their belt. A different company owns those ones right now. I don't remember who it is. But I'm sure those releases are just as good. But they lack the flair that these have, because these have, the custom art. They have the posters. Just so much fun. You can tell a lot of love went into this. And I would love to see that with those releases, but I'm sure they have their own, unique way of presenting them. Not to say that I wouldn't buy them. Like, the Video Violence ones I'm definitely interested in. But I have them on DVD, the original releases, so I don't need them, but if they ever go on sale, I might check them out. But yeah, this company has easily kind of stuck out to me because they're doing a lot of stuff that a lot of people would overlook. Like, we don't want to see that, and that's a damn shame because some of the stuff, even though it's a little schlocky, it's pretty entertaining, and you have a lot of fun watching them. So yeah, there's my video on the boutique. That's the term that people use for these labels. Um, yeah, there's a lot of different options out there. Some of them are still around. Some are unfortunately long gone, but you can still find the releases here and there for decent prices. Um, but if you're buying something kind of from one of these newer ones, you're gonna probably pay a good amount. But just look into what they come with. Decide if that price point is good for you. If you want to wait till there's a sale, and a lot of them they have like really insane box sets. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Vinegar Syndrome. They did like a box set that was like a bunch of '80s movies, and they had dolls in there, and they had uh, like it was a random assortment. It was it was more like rental themed, like movies that you would rent. Um, but they had dolls in there, and I was like, oh, I really want the dolls released, but I don't want the whole box set. I just want the movie The Dolls on the Blu-ray or 4K. Unfortunately, it was part of that box set. So that's how they get you to buy some of the lesser known movies that you wouldn't normally want. But that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week.